Hey, welcome everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are from.
I am just turning the waiting room off right now. There we go. That's off. Um, hey everyone, I'm Sean. Uh, Joined here with Hi and Stravia. Um, we'll do intros in a quick second. I think a lot of you have been to our, I see some familiar faces in here already, so I think a lot of you have already been to many of our sessions. But just to get it started, maybe drop in the chat where you're joining from. Want to get an idea of, your city or country, wherever you are. Are you in the living room? Are you in the office? Are you in your home office? What are your coordinates exactly? I'm located in South Lake Tahoe, California. Nice.
Paris, Ireland, Boston, Toronto, a lot of East Coast folks.
We
Ukraine.
we could be biasing the data by keeping it at 8 a.m. PST. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, we moved our time zones because I feel like we were doing a lot of our things at like noon Pacific time, but I think that misses a lot of time zones.
But look at that. There are Santa Clara. There is also Seattle. Not bad, West Coast. That's awesome for
Nice,
an 8 a.m. meeting.
nice, bright and early.
Sila's from Nairobi. Very cool.
Sweet. While those roll in, we can do some quick intros. I'm Sean, I'm one of the co-founders of the AI Analyst Lab. We do kind of research and education around the field of agentic analytics. Been working in data science for a little over a decade. Past couple years more in the kind of AI evals, AI analytics space. So that'll be the topic of today's, which we'll get into a little bit. I'll pass off to Hai and do a quick intro.
Hey everyone. My name is Hai. I've been in the data science and analytics space for around 20 years. Um, Most recently at consumer tech companies. Spent time at Nextdoor. That's where I met these folks, co-founder of AI Analyst Lab. We provide a lot of these workshops like these, both free and paid. So very excited to have you all here. Over to you, Shravya.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shravya Madipalli. I am one of the co-founders along with Sean and Hai. I have around 15 years of experience, starting with Microsoft. I see some of the Seattle folks. I was there for 6 years. Later moved on to eBay, Nextdoor, and most recently Grammarly, which was rebranded as Superhuman. Yeah, so very excited to share everything that we're doing in the world of AI, guys, agentic analytics, and it's pretty awesome to be part of in this domain. Yeah, over to you, Sean.
Cool. So we'll get right into it. I know everyone's got a lot of stuff to do. If you can't stay for the whole session, we'll send out a recording. We'll send out an email afterwards with some of the resources we're going to go through today. We've got some free resources for you. And then we'll send out the recording, I don't know, probably in a couple of days, by Friday at least. So where we're headed today. So I'm sure a lot of if you've seen our kind of work before, if you've been messing around with AI on your own and you're working in the data field, you've probably seen that AI, like it can now kind of run an end-to-end analysis in minutes, really. It can write the SQL, it can run the SQL, it can make a chart, it can reason through and make some recommendations, and it can be really polished and confident and also sometimes completely wrong. So getting the answer kind of has stopped being the hard part. And then now, like knowing whether you can even trust the answer is where a lot of the work lies now. So that's what today's about. I'll show you there's a whole spectrum of ways you can kind of check the work. There's ways to do it manually, there's ways to do it to completely automated fashion, and then there's space in between. We're just going to go through one check live today because we don't have that much time. We have multiple courses on this in our 101 bootcamp around building AI analysts. It's like building agentic analytics 101. We go through 5 of these checks, 3 live, 2 in sync. And then we have an entire advanced 201 agentic analytics course where we primarily just focus on really AI evals validation and context engineering, which happens to be a lot of the ways that you increase the trustworthiness of your output. So we'll hop into it. I do want to get a couple of reads of the room before we start. So first one, drop a letter in the chat here just to see where folks are. If you've never used Claude Code before, we're going to be doing a little demo here with Claude Code. B, if you used it, but not for analytics. And C, if you've used it and you've used it for analytics. So yeah, go ahead in there. What do we got going on in the chat? Hi, Ansravia.
Mostly C's. Wow. And
I
then
think
some B's.
it's good for us to get a pulse, I think, also just on like where things are. If we asked this question in almost every single one of our lessons, and when we asked it 4 months ago, I'd say everyone was A or B. But a lot of people are using this for analytics now, which is really awesome, and also just makes it so important to be like, hey, now do I trust this thing? How do I set up evals? I've kind of done the step one. I used it for analytics now. We probably need a D on here of like, do you trust when you use it for analytics? Okay, good. That's awesome. This is who this built for. If you're an A or B, that's great too. Next question, also just to get a kind of spread of the room. What's your role? And you don't need to write A, B, C, D here, but what's your role? You're a product manager. Are you a founder? Are you in marketing? Are you engineer? Are you designer? Are you in data? I just like saying the chef one. We had the corporate chef the other day, and that's awesome. And then I started using Claude for cooking a little bit. I've been telling you guys I've been using it for like my fitness and nutrition tracking. And then yesterday it was like, you had too many fatty foods earlier. You have to have this many grams of carbs. And I was like, all right, tell me how to do it. And then it like made me this delicious burrito bowl recipe. Tell me how to cook chicken in a little different way too. Which is not the topic of this, but if you guys want to know, chicken Mexican high carb burrito bowl recipe where you can cook the chicken from frozen, doesn't even need to be thawed. Works pretty well. Took 30 minutes. Thanks, Claude. A lot of founders in here. Chef turned data engineer. Yep. Back to chef. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. Lots of people on the data teams there. Good to get a read of the room. Who's in here? So to start off, what are we even going to talk about? So what is this like AI analytics thing? Because this is like a newer term and it's a bit vague. So when I think about it at its like most high level, I would say like agentic analytics means something like you ask a question in says English here in natural language, right? Natural language question, something like why is checkout dropping? And you have a system that goes and writes the SQL, runs it against your data, builds a chart, hands you back a recommendation. There's no like human in between sitting in the middle of doing it. Just kind of does the whole thing. So input a question, you add with that question, you add your data, whatever context you've given it, and then the output is a number and a little story about what happened. And usually there's here's what you should do about it as well. So a year ago, I think, I've seen a lot of demos on this stuff. We run a podcast called Data Neighbor Podcast, where those demos got increasingly better and better and better. A year ago, I don't know, it kind of seemed like a little bit of like a party trick, like what's really going on in that demo? Is this going to work on my data? And now people are really actually shipping real decisions off the back of it. So I think it's moved a long way, especially in the past, I'd say 4 to 6 months. So that's the shift. And that's why, as it scales and as more people are using it for real decision making, it's why that kind of like checking the work part of it suddenly matters a lot more than it used to. So what makes this difference from a person doing the analysis is simple. When it's wrong, doesn't look wrong. So, you get a really clean looking number, a clean story, like every single time, whether the answer is right or completely off. There's no like, let me double check that. And it basically hands you that wrong answer with exactly the same confidence it hands you the right answer, right? So, and that costs you, I think, in a couple of ways, a few ways, probably more than this, but the main ways I think it costs you is that I've seen happen a few times already. The first is trust. So if you put a confidently wrong number and you like give it to the board or a leader or even just a teammate, um, you don't really have a lot of that trust built already, or you don't have like a kind of like understanding of we're in like experimental mode right now. When somebody catches it, now nobody believes that tool again, right? Nobody believes that approach again. Nobody, maybe people don't like trust you. That's fair, maybe that's not. But there's a real like trust is like Pi likes to say like trust is like really hard to build and then really easy to lose. So you don't want to lose trust. That's one thing what happens when it goes wrong. And then the second, I think is worse is this like, oh, so people all trusted it. It was wrong, and then we acted on it. So we like ship a thing uh that moved the number instead of the thing that actually helped the customer. And you don't find out for like a quarter or something, and it comes back to this system that gave you a wrong answer. So you can make real wrong product and business decisions off it, right? Um, okay. Let's do a little thinking exercise here. So drop in the chat. It doesn't have to be one of the things up here either. Where do you think AI analysis goes wrong? Is it like the SQL? Is it picking the wrong metric? Is it like the recommendation at the end? Is it something else? Feel free to throw a guess in the chat. Definitions and gotchas, hallucinating data, wrong context to interpret analysis, incomplete context, wrong metric, everywhere, context and nuance. Oh, Brian said it almost happened to him today. Yeah, I mean, like knowing about the business that's a real check. Bad storytelling, company history is incomplete, cleaning analysis. Yeah, these are all really, really good. Probably better to go where it goes right today since the slice is thin. Yeah, I like that. Cool. Yeah, so you can see it goes wrong all over the place. It can go wrong at any of those points, which is exactly kind of where I'm headed next here. So uh, you'll hear this word, AI evals, come in. So I'll give you like a pretty like I don't know my like highest level definition of it. It sounds like a little technical one, but it isn't really. An eval, it's just a check that tells you how much to trust an answer that you didn't work out yourself. So the system handed you a number, or handed you, as some alluded to in the chat here, a story. And you didn't do the math. So an eval is going to help you figure out how far you can actually lean into that number, how much you can actually trust it. Getting the answer, like I said before, it just keeps getting easier and faster. So knowing how much to trust it, that's actually going to get easier and faster too, but that's just like where the work has moved. So you can think about the shape of this too. It's not just a yes or no stamp that says this answer is true or this answer is false. Like sometimes we'll have that. And in cases where we actually have that, then it's kind of like you don't even really need this system because you're probably pulling from some other place. It's more about like how much on a scale that you trust it. And you can match that to the stakes of the decision you're going to try to make with that number. So like you don't have to go and do some crazy rigorous eval pipeline for every single number you do. If it's a throwaway question that someone's asking just because they're curious and they just want some directional understanding, you can kind of like do some pretty quick, barely check that number. A number that you're going to like report to the street, report to the board, or that like a big decision leans on, like a real decision. You can really check it like you mean it. So trust is like I think is but as like a dial, not a switch. And then we'll come back to this at the end, but like I said before, that this whole discipline of evals for analytics is what our Agentic Analytics 201 bootcamp is all about, and that is coming up in a week and a half, or I think it's a week-long bootcamp of validation. So if we think back to that picture from the start of the input and output, question goes in, recommendation comes out. It's easy to think of that picture as as the middle, as just like one box that kind of like does the thing. But as we've seen just in the chat with everything that you all just said around like, the different ways this can go wrong, clearly it's not just like one little box in between that like turns your input into an output. There's a whole pipeline in there. It interprets what you asked. It picks which tables. It picks the definition of a metric. It writes the SQL. It runs it. It reads the result. It decides what's even worth saying, and then it writes a recommendation. So that's like 7 steps right there, and it's probably is most definitely not exhaustive. Each one of those steps has multiple places where they can totally go off the tracks. And it really matters when you think about this in terms of a pipeline too, because it helps in terms of like prioritization of where you're going to want to spend your time in evaluation. An error that's really early in this pipeline, like query generation, question intake, analysis, that's going to carry through to everything after it. So if it grabbed the wrong definition of an active user back in step 2, every chart, every confidence sentence after that is just sitting on a bad number. And they're all still going to look clean, right? So is it right? Isn't really one question. It's more like many smaller questions at each of these steps. So I just dropped some of the checks. Again, not exhaustive, but like some checks we do at each of these steps. So at each one of these steps, there's something you can actually look at. Like, did it understand the question you asked? Is the SQL correct? Is it using the metric the way you mean it? Did it pick a like robust defensible methodology of analysis? Does the chart match the number underneath it? Every step has its own thing to check. And you can keep it pretty manageable because each of these checks is really just kind of like one of 4 kinds, and I'll show those in a second. But the darker ones here, if I click the shading, is like the darker ones are kind of like where I'd spend more of my time rather than kind of these ones are like easier fixes. So there's a few checks also that don't sit in any single step. They run across like the whole kind of surface area. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat here. 7 steps, 9 questions. Is slide generator failing? Yeah, probably. Oh yeah, the 9 questions are going to be like all these checks over here. There's multiple questions under each of these. So these checks that don't sit at any steps, they run across the whole thing. So it's like, do you get the same answer if you run it through more than one model? So reliability. Can you trace every number back to the exact query that produced it? Reliability, which is just asking the same question again and again, so if it holds, running kind of underneath everything here. You put those per step checks together with these few that are cross-cutting across everything, and that's kind of our, I don't know, if you get that, you get a pretty robust system, not exhaustive, but pretty robust system of evaluating an agentic analytics pipeline end to end. And then so I guess like from this slide, the main thing I want to take away here is like eval is not a single score. It's like many checks at each of these steps, plus some that run through the whole kind of gambit. So it's a lot. So the obvious question then is, how do I actually run any of them? Which ones do I run? To what level of rigor do I run each of these depending on my specific kind of use case? So you don't really need a different trick for all 9 of these checks down here. There's really kind of just like a handful of ways to check any output. So here's 4 of them. 1, check it against a known answer. You've probably heard of this as like ground truth. Not always going to have it, but if you happen to have a known answer. That's one way to check. 2, grade it against a rubric, just kind of like, you'd grade an essay, for instance. And humans can use those rubrics to grade. LLMs can use it. You want to probably start with a human, multiple iterations to make sure that rubric is really sound. And then you can then scale the grading up with like an LLM as a judge. 3, ask it several different ways and see if the answers line up. And then 4, make sure you just show the receipts. The last one's like a very low level lift and goes a long way around how much you can trust an answer. So, show the actual SQL, where the actual number came from. This is something we should all probably be doing today in our analysis, regardless of AI, right? Yeah, in terms of do models agree, we're actually going to do that today, Swagata. We're going to go through reliability today. We're going to go just within the same like Opus 4.8 model, but we'll have like a reliability check where you run a few subagents on the same question. But one thing we've been doing a lot of is like run the same analysis and run it against like different models, like within like the Opus family itself, 4.6, 4.8, 4.7, run it against codex models, run it against open source models, and see if you can triangulate the same answer. If you can't, then there's something going on there, right? There could still be something going on there if they all do agree. If they all make the same mistake, you have to have that baked into your system. But if you're looking at totally different models, it's a little less likely that would happen. And then there's a few gut checks you can run on any analysis. That's like, did it even run? Did it use a defensible approach? Does it give the same answer if you ask again? So maybe, I don't know, like if people are already kind of like, so yeah, like actually Brian mentioned it today. He kind of had a close call with some wrong numbers, but he knew the business pretty well. Might have not been an exact known answer. Like the known answer doesn't have to be like X equals X. It can be like, I know this space, and if I think about it, like this number seems way off. But which ones of these you already do? And you can add, if there's other ones in here too, that's fine too, but like known answer rubric, asking multiple ways, showing the receipts. How are people kind of even informally, right? Yeah, let's see. Good, I mean, good kind of spread against everything. A lot of people are doing 4. That's great. A lot of people are doing 1. 1, sometimes you don't have. 4 is really good. Low effort, ask several ways. Nice. Yeah, 1's typical. Yeah, anything novel you haven't checked before, like you're not going to have 1 for it. We're going to do a lightning lesson next week called pressure testing AI analysis. I'll drop or if Hi or Shravya want to drop the link in there. It's another free workshop. We're going to talk about like what you do when you don't have a known answer. And then I'll have like a QR code for that later on in the presentation too.
That's the lesson next week, John.
Yeah. I think it's like next Wednesday. I think it's the same time slot. It's called like pressure testing AI analysis or something. All right, so 2 caveats. So yeah, go ahead and sign up for that if you're interested in figuring out like what you do when you don't have ground truth. So 2 caveats here, because I don't want to oversell all this stuff, right? The first one is about agreement. So asking several ways and getting the same answer back is reassurance. It's not proof the answer is correct. So if the system is wrong for the same reason every time, it's just going to agree with itself every time and tell you the wrong answer. It's going to tell you nothing. So actually, I find the more useful signal when like we're building out agentic analytics systems is actually disagreement, because that gives me a direction to like dig into and improve the system. So it tells me like what I can fix. And we'll get a bit into that today in the demo. And then the second caveat is that, yeah, you don't run all of this on everything. Like match the effort of your evaluation to the stakes, just like you would do with anything in your job. So if it's a throwaway question, like whatever, you don't need to go super in depth on everything here for a throwaway kind of I'm curious question from someone important where you just have to give an answer. Um, and then yeah, but never going to, like I said before, like something that's like, publicly reported or you're making a big decision off of, or it's going to the board, like, yeah, you probably want to give like a more robust treatment to that. Um, I'm going to give you a sheet later on that'll kind of like help you triangulate, like based on where you're at with your company and your decision and what's available with your ground truth. Which one of these, how robust do you want to go? Like a lot of folks that we've talked to are on leaner teams, right? Like they don't have the resources to go through this full gambit. So there's a smaller version of this, like doing the cheaper checks, that can make you have a much more better understanding of how much you can trust this, but without having to like spend a ton of cycles on it. So this is our kind of current map of what you might check across the pipeline. It's not exhaustive. It's just kind of where our thinking is right now. But you can see, like we said before, there's a lot of checks, whether the SQL is right, whether it picked a defensible method, whether the number reconciles. Today, we're just going to focus on one of them, and that's reliability. And then, this is the thing we teach hands-on. In the bootcamp, the intro bootcamp, you build your own agentic analyst and you build these checks into it. There's also a whole 201 course built purely on this validation and then how to improve it, which turns out to be a lot of context engineering. We'll get back to this later. I'm also going to send you out email with some PDFs, worksheets around the frameworks we talked about today. Okay, so let me move over to Claude Code. The check we're doing today is that simplest one, reliability, and it's the one you can run no matter how messy your setup is because it doesn't need an answer key at all. The whole idea is just ask the same question more than once, see what hold and see what moves. So let me switch over there. And can everyone see Claude Code? It should be on my desktop here. Yep. If it's hard for you to see, you can kind of zoom in via Zoom. Nice. Seems like people can see it. Okay, so, all right, actually, before we start, let's do a kind of prediction. I think I got a slide on this. All right, so same question. I'm going to run the same question. I'm going to run it 5 times. Do you think we'll get the same answer all 5 times? Yes or no? I'm going to ask a couple of questions. The first one I'm going to ask is around, we're going to look at like a synthetic e-commerce website. You can kind of think Amazon. I'm going to ask it, how are we doing on checkout conversions? So given that question, what's your thoughts? You can drop in the chat. Lots of no's. There's pretty low confidence in this system. Pretty low confidence in this system. Yeah, Logan. Logan's like, hell yeah, agentic analytics is the future. Same answer. Okay, let's try it out. All right, so I've created a skill here. And I don't think this skill is pushed yet, but you are all in luck. We haven't actually formally released this yet, but we have 2 versions of our AI analyst. One's AI analyst, one's plus. The plus one's AI analyst open source hasn't really been developed on since like March. And then we have a plus version, which we've been constantly developing on the whole time. That's actually available right now to the public. We're just going to move all that stuff into like a V3 or V2 of the, I guess V2 of the AI analyst repo, if you already have that on your machine. But maybe maybe Hi or Shravia, you can drop the AI Analyst Plus repo in here. This skill, the reliability one, I don't think is pushed there. I have it brought in just for the purpose of this demo, but we have a separate repo that I'll open source that's going to be around like all the different like agentic analytics eval skills. Okay, so and then I'm using VS Code here, Jennifer. All right. So basically what this skill does, it fires, you ask it a question, you tell it like how many like cycles you want to run on that question. It fires that and independent runs. Um, it collects all that data and stores it, and then it compares it, calculates the mean, variance, etc. And then it does a little report that says like, hey, is it stable? Is it drift? And how could we improve it? So we're going to run, what did I say? How are we doing on checkout conversion? I think I have this prompt somewhere. Here it is. Okay, so you're saying I'm going to invoke the reliability skill. I'm going to say, how are we doing on checkout conversion? Run it 5 times. So this should kick off 5 separate processes once it gets going. Yeah, so it spins up 5 independent subagents, measures whether answers agree, launches those concurrently, eat those tokens. So you can see it's all running here. And what it's actually doing, we have our data in a Snowflake data warehouse here. And so each of these agents is going to start hitting Snowflake on their own. We actually have something we've set up so we can always go back and see the work and like audit the work that's been done. We have a hook here where anytime there's like a tool call to the Snowflake MCP query, we have it record the work for us. And I think that's down and working while this runs. I can show it. Oh man, my computer is slow. Where is working? I just saw it. If I close this down. Close some other tabs. Okay, so let's return those. Oh yeah, here it is, query log. Come on, open up. Well, it gave me the answer here, but it seems lagging like crazy. I wanted to show you guys the query log. Well, you can scroll up here. It's the wrong thing. All right, so it ran 5 times, and man, I don't know why my computer is going so slow, but you can see it actually came back with the same answer for this one every single time. So it came back with 33.2%, and you can see it actually lists the source here. And the reason it does this is because we have a metric dictionary that tells Claude what we mean when we say conversion rate. So if we go to, okay, now we're back at like regular speed here. So if we go into our knowledge base and we go to datasets, NovaMart metrics index, there's, this is pretty empty, right? Because I just added this morning, but there is I don't have this thing again, but there is a clear numeric definition is. And so if we think about it, this is actually hiding something here. So this ran, the reason it didn't have variance was because we had that in the dictionary, but it's actually hiding, it's hiding something in terms of like, is that the definition we actually need? So checkout conversion actually probably has like several actual readings behind it that could all be defensible. Like you can count from the moment someone starts checkout to when they pay. That's the one that's in our dictionary. You could also count every session that ever landed. You could count cart to checkout or checkout to payment step, or you can count people instead of sessions. Those are all like real definitions, and they'd all end up being totally different numbers on this exact same data. So our dictionary is where it pins to one of them, which is why it came back stable. But if we were in like an actual meeting, like that definition might not be what our stakeholders were looking at or wanted to look at. So sometimes I think it's more helpful to see the divergence first, because checkout conversion in my head could have meant something totally different than checkout conversion in, say, Hi or Shrivia's head. Reliability just told me the system is consistent with one of those definitions. But it didn't necessarily say that like that was the right definition. So stability is necessary, but it's not totally sufficient. So we're going to do the same setup with a different question now. And this other question is not in our metric dictionary here. So we should get variance across runs, I would think. We're going to ask, let's see, we're going to ask about retention rate. So for unreliability, what's our retention rate? And so it's going through the same process again. It's going to kick off 5 subagents to run the same question. Here's what I was trying to show you before. So when it runs a SQL, we have it record, that hook has it record the SQL it runs every time. So you can see it has like the timestamp. This is just an ad hoc analysis. If it's part of like a project was working on it, it would tag with that. And then it has the purpose, and then it has the actual SQL that was ran. So you can see there's a bunch here on checkout conversion, right? Because you have multiple subagents running it at once, hitting Snowflake. This is really nice for later on. I mean, like if I got a bunch of different answers, or if I even got the same answer, one of the main things I would have, which is part of like doing having this validation, is just like showing the receipts, right? And so I could actually have the exact SQL pointed to it, or I could just talk to Claude too. And so you can see it's just populating more SQL runs as they come in now, but now for retention. But having that kind of like audit trail is really nice for just understanding how much you can trust it and know what is going on. You could hit like Control O or something and see what's running in the background while it's going to check it as well. You could ask Claude, but like I do have concerns about it just like hallucinating. What I've seen is if I don't have this recorded somewhere through a hook where it's actually writing down the exact query it's running. I could also have it go like look at Snowflake query history or something. Um, then it takes a guess at what it did before, looking at its previous context. If you clear out the context, it's not really going to know. So like having like a solid audit trail. All right, so all 5 runs returned. This time they're staggered. It's going to record the results for me in a JSON with all the runs, and it's going to do the calculations. And so you can see this time, like last time, some of the sources were actually looking at a metric definition catalog. And then this time it basically just says like the source was, it made it up on the fly. So these two get pretty close, right? 99.3, 99.2. They're like active in month and month +1. This is active in month after sign up cohort grain. The first one's 9.7%, 30-day repeat purchases, second completed order within 30 days. First, remember, we're asking about retention. This definition, 34.9, repeat purchase rate, purchasers with 2+ orders divided by all purchases over the full year. 78% week 1 new users that have more than 1 session in the first 7 days after sign up. And then we talked about these ones. These are like of the month 1 cohort, how many were active in the month after the sign up month. This one's pretty similar. But these are all pretty solid definitions of retention. Like if you've been in a meeting where you're trying to pick metrics, you could easily have like 4 people in the room kind of arguing these different ones because they all help you in different ways. Conversion, even if I hadn't had the metric definition for like cart conversion, that's a little more cut and dry. I bet we would have got like 3 out of 5 matching at least, but it's not that much of a surprise to me where it's like, man, these are just all over the place. So like, and like imagine how this shows up in a deck. Imagine if you have a leader that says, I want to know what retention, that just asks that like very like kind of vague high level question, but like very like natural. What's our retention rate? And like you could tell them 9.7% or 99.3%. So the way to like this tells us like, what am I going to do with this? Well, I'm probably going to go back to my team. I'm going to like define retention rate with them. This is actually kind of nice. It like gives me some options for retention. Maybe they don't want any of these. But it just tells me where to dig, right? And this is clearly a metric definition problem. And then to fix it, if I wanted everything to stabilize, I would get the agreed on definition, and then I would just add that to like some sort of context somewhere. And there's many ways you can manage context. One way could be something like this, where you have like a YAML file where you store all your metrics definitions. But it's pretty crazy to see the spread. And like that would kill trust. If someone was thinking the repeat purchase rate, purchasers with 2+ orders over all purchases, if a leader was thinking in their mind of like what retention is, and then you told them 99.3%, they'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't believe anything Sean says. Okay, so this was just like one of those boxes. If we zoom back out, 1 check reliability, 1 box on a big map. So notice what it did and didn't do. It caught that retention wasn't stable. That's a big warning. It didn't on its own tell me which reading was the right one. I would have to supply that definition. The other boxes on the map cover the rest of it, the receipts, the approach, ground truth, where you happen to have it if you have ground truth. And how hard you push on any of this comes back to like your use case and what the stakes are. If you're idly curious, 1 run is probably plenty. If your number is driving real decision, then you want to check this stuff like more robustly. Okay. Oh yeah. Before we'll go over to questions in a bit here. Let me grab you what I promised. I posted this right before this session. I think I have it up here actually. There's this. I'll send this in the email too. But this kind of worksheet is like a little bit of a self-assessment. Helps you figure out which of your analyses actually need this kind of checking, what you've realistically got to check them against. Do this one first. It tells you where to spend your attention before you spend it. I'll drop a link to this post on it if you want to download the PDF there. But I'll also send this in an email later today. And then I have another worksheet that I'll share. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Yes. This one gets more into kind of like the different ways. We kind of went over these, right? But the different ways to check anything, gut check wise, and then what you're going to do based on your kind of low stakes to high stakes effort. So I'll share both of these in the email, but you can grab that other one from that link right now if you want to check that out in the meantime. And then we'll also send a recording out. I think we got a couple of discounts codes. We can show those in email. I think I'll go over kind of like what's coming up. Sravia, feel free to drop those discounts in the chat too. But a few things coming up, and then we'll get into questions. I can stay a little over for questions. I know we got about 12 minutes left. If you actually want to build this, here's where go. Every one of these has a QR code right on the screen, so you can just pick up your phone right now and kind of click which one you want. Top of the list on the left, this one's free. This is what I mentioned earlier. It's the next lightning lesson, pressure test, any AI analysis on Wednesday, June 24th, 8 a.m. Pacific. That's going to tell you how to tell if an analysis is actually right when there's not really an answer key to check against. If you scan that, you can register for free right now, just like you did for this one. Then the courses, so we have a 101 bootcamp. This is where you build your own agentic analytic system. That's July 13th to 17th. We offer it again, I think end of August. So if you don't get this one in July, it's going to be another 6 or 7 weeks till we run it again. We just ran it this past weekend. And then 201 is the one built. We also do go into some eval validation stuff in that 101, since it is kind of like table stakes stuff now. And then 201 is built purely on what we did today, like validation and context. We also go into multimodals like open source and codex. That's going to be in 2 weeks or a week and a half, June 27th to July 4th. And then there's a 5-week one, AI Analytics for everyone. This one is like the thinking itself. So that runs right now from June 15th to July 19th. We'll run it again in August. That's about the whole, like, we kind of say it's like a mini masters in data science, but the execution layer is in Claude Code rather than in SQL and Python R directly. Whether or not you do any of these, I'll send you those worksheets in the recording later today. We'll get into questions in a second here. One note on the one promo we are running right now. The 5-week course, AI Analytics for Everyone, the one about the whole analytical thinking and the judgment behind it and how to execute in Claude Code. We actually just kicked this off this past week, so we're on day 3. It's a mix of async and live material. So if you want to join this one, you basically have just missed 2 office hours at this point, and they're both recorded. So we're leaving that registration open until the end of the week. Easily can catch up. And it's self-paced, so you take out your own time and you can have the content for forever. It's not like you're at 5 weeks, it goes away. And then the part that we think is really makes it worthwhile is if you register for the 5-week course, you add a seat for free, or not free, $10, in our 101 bootcamp, which is normally $900. So you get that thinking course and the builder course basically together for the price of the 5-week course. Yeah, you can scan the QR code on the screen, or Shravia or Hi just dropped a link in the chat. You can DM us or email us about it too if you have got questions. But basically, sign up for AIMs for everyone, and then just DM me and I'll give you a code to get into the $900 bootcamp for $10. Okay, let's get into questions. Just a few. I'll run through a few I often get, and then we'll open it up. I see there's already some coming into chat. Most common one by far is like, what if I don't have a big data team or my data is a mess? Can I do this? So yes, this is actually who it helps a lot. You can take the leaner path to evals. You can lean on the cheaper checks like reliability and making sure it's receipts. You can save that heavy stuff for the handful of numbers that really, really have like high stakes behind them. You don't need a super clean like data warehouse to run the same question twice and notice if it disagreed with itself, right? So there are leaner checks that you can incorporate right now today that don't require a bunch of technical skill or rigor or really strong data foundations. They're going to flag probably that you don't have strong data foundations, but that's great. That's like a good step one. Next one I get a lot is like, how do you get ground truth when you don't have the answer key? So you almost certainly have ground truth. You've just never labeled it as such. So think about like finance reconciled numbers, queries that you've written like dozens or hundreds of times, or someone else has. It's like a nice head start and it's a real place to anchor to. So there's probably ground truth sitting in the context of your business that's just not labeled as ground truth, but you can kind of like reapply it as ground truth to test against. But I mentioned a little bit about this in terms of like talking about the subagents, but we also talked about how we do like multi-model kind of triangulation. So if multiple models agree, is it right? This is the one you got to be careful about. So agreement, like I said, is reassurance. It's not proof that the number is correct. So say if models are trained on similar data, they're going to share the same blind spots. So they can still be competently wrong together. Like I said, the more useful signal I find is when they disagree, because that tells me where to dig and gives me a lot more context about what's going on behind the scenes. And then if it's stable, if it gives you the same answer every time, is it right? Kind of similar to the last one, no. A wrong query can be perfectly stable. It'll hand you the same wrong number all day if you execute that query over and over again. This just has nothing even to do with AI analytics. That's just like people running queries. But I've written plenty of wrong queries. So stable is necessary, but it's not sufficient. So it tells you the system's settled, not that it's settled on the truth. Okay, let's get to some questions. I haven't been looking at these, but hi, and Shravia, have you any questions that popped up here? We've got about 5 minutes. I can go 10 or 15 minutes over that.
Yeah, I think that's good for questions. Valens has a question around two questions. Is there a skill in the repo to help work through metrics definition? And the second one is, how does this dovetail with choosing North Star metrics in the session on Friday? I think that was last Friday. I know that session was more on reasoning if the metrics chose past a certain rubric, but would it help when the definition of the metric was not completely agreed on within a team?
Yeah, so those really good questions. The North Star metrics is probably, we have a few skills around metrics, but I'd say the North Star metric stuff, which I'm actually pulling out into its own repo right now that I'll hopefully get up in the next week or so. But it's in that +1 if you all found that. I think that's probably our more robust skill around, because it does have multi-modes around auditing metrics, explaining what good metrics are, going through the checks of a strong metric. and then you can have it. It will like apply those to your metric definition YAML file in there within the workflow. In terms of like, yeah, we haven't created anything, but maybe we should do this actually. This would be pretty interesting. We haven't created anything in terms of like, hey, how do you uh leverage a system here to like get alignment across your team? The North Star metric one I think would be really good because you could have people like come up with ideas and then you could audit them through that system and it will give you recommendations and show you the weaknesses. And it has that huge knowledge base that cites like actual case studies and it cites a lot of that like Amplitude North Star metric framework playbook that's free online. So I think it's a nice resource to have when you're having that discussion with your team because it will tell you, you can use like I think it was like the North Star metric skill and then like dash explain and have a concept. And that's like basically you're having like an expert on this in the room with you, like talking through your team. But I think we could totally create something where it's like, hey, record this team meeting with everyone talking about the metrics and kind of live give some input or trying to align or even like hit, rephrase as like, hey, Hi is thinking about this metric in this way. Sean's thinking about it in this way. Where is the overlap? Why are they diverging? I think we could create something around there. But there's nothing right now in there that does that. Really good question and good idea. You can make it two valence. You can make that. You could extend the North Star metric thing to the team thing.
Thanks for that. I might give it a shot. And that framing of like taking in multiple definitions and running them on the North Star metric, I think gets that same sort of level setting for everyone. Great answer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great session.
No worries. No worries.
All right, let's see. Next question Anas had. Some companies don't allow providing full database access to the AI, but allow to use it without giving it any company context. What are your thoughts on organizations like banks and fintech that restrict usage of AI due to data security? Cool session, by the way.
Just a matter of time. They'll either rise to the top or burn to the ground. No, I'm just kidding. I think there's listen, like, yeah, there's a couple things you could do to improve your system. There's one is like building within the system itself, like agents, skills, how things are structured. The other is framing your input in a more robust way. Another is adding context. I've found by far, and especially as the models just progress on their own in terms of capability, context is the thing that really improves them. Something like a metric definition, though, I mean, I don't think you're like giving any company secrets away. Something about go access all of my data and store those results somewhere is a different thing. So I feel like, kind of some of like the just like metric definitions in themselves, I don't see that as like kind of going against like those like security restrictions around context. Something that we've done at our company or my company I worked at before is anonymized a bunch of data so we could work with it more reliably that way. So we built a whole system that anonymizes data. And this is pretty highly sensitive data. It was like a legal AI company. So it's like contracts and stuff. And then there was ways to do this more secure. Like we also use when we run things through Claude Code, when we do non-anonymized data, we run it in like a safe like hosted instance, like in SageMaker. We run it with Amazon Bedrock models. We run it where we have like zero data retention policies. So I think, obviously this is a huge question that we get a lot of times, like, how do I deal with security? And a lot of the answer is going to be like, just like with any other piece of software, that's going to be like legal security, IT team thing to work with. We can talk through like some of the stuff we've seen successful before, but every AI company, every frontier lab is like trying to come up with solutions to make this as secure as possible too, because that's a huge friction point for them.
Yeah. And then possible another another option, and probably where things are headed, is open source models. Like you host your own
Yeah.
open source locally. So you can even run the AI without internet, and it certainly doesn't go anywhere. Like your data doesn't go anywhere. It lives in your machine, stuff like that. You'll have to have, or your company will have to have a really powerful machine if you wanted to do the max capability on the analytics side. But I think that's a viable option as well, as people are waiting for security clearance and stuff like that.
Yeah, and we actually do that in our week-long 201 bootcamp where we talk about validation, context engineering, multi-models, one of those models is open source models. And I'm pretty bullish on the open source model stuff. I know Hai's been doing a lot of research into it. But I mean, if you think about, I just look at like the model evolutions that's happened recently. Personally, when you have a harness, like when you build an agentic system, analytic system to do analytics around a model, between Opus 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, and Fable, 4.6 does the just as good, actually better than 4.7 and 4.8, when it has a system around it. If you have no system around it and you're just like opening up a terminal and there's no repo or anything, and you're asking analytics questions, like, yeah, Fable blew those others out of the water, but it was just like totally at parity when you put a system around it. So at some point, like those open source models will be at the level of Opus 4.6, and eventually they'll be cheap, or they'll be like smaller and be able to be at that level. It's just a matter of time. So
I mean, DeepSeek V4 Pro, the one that I've been testing quite a bit, seems pretty promising, but we'll see.
yeah, we'll do some free session on the open source stuff at some time soon, maybe in the next month or two. But if you really want to
Yeah.
get into it, join our 201 course.
All right. Probably the last question here. Let me see. Semantic layer explaining definitions, data, metrics takes so long. Any good advice on how to cut corners responsibly? I can take a crack at this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Gene, semantic layers is so here's how I think about it. It is a very powerful way to govern your enterprise level data across the company. Certainly very painful because, and the pain is actually pretty interesting. It's not the execution layer anymore. Like you can build systems where writing the pipeline, building the data models, and actually crafting the whatever warehouse you have, or whatever uh, ETL tools you have. Like that's not the hard part. That part is pretty simple. The really long, time consuming, and people avoid part is like the people and process upfront, like agreeing on the definition, agreeing on the specifics, agreeing on the filtering, agreeing on what each component actually means, because they're responsible for explaining the metric themselves and owning it. The thing that I find at my company is that that is the hard part where people are like, oh yeah, just define something, but then at the end, it's like not actually that simple because like we can define something, but if they don't agree later on, and you've built everything and reporting and whatever, and like they come back to you and be like, hey, I never agreed to this, what's going on? That itself is actually worse than doing the upfront work of like, hey, this is what we agreed on, this is everything that's aligned, and then everything else is like just a click of a button. I mean, I'm exaggerating here, but that's sort of like the thing. And so the top part just cannot be avoided. It's just people things.
Yeah, if you want people to align on metrics, just make metrics that go up and to the right is what I find. People like those ones. But when they're going down, people are saying like, this isn't the definition I had in mind. Um, just joking, but okay, I have a couple other questions on here. You guys can kind of review the slides afterwards if you want to go. Go just I guess the last one I would leave with here is, won't models get good enough and we won't need any of this eval stuff? I think it's actually the opposite. I just based on how I've seen the models progress, like the more of the work we hand off, I think the more we need to check it, not less. So like reliability, ground truth, whether it was even the right call to make, none of that goes away as the models get better. I think they're going to get a lot better at being right, but I think they're also going to get a lot better at being super convincingly wrong too. So I would, if you're thinking about like where to invest your time right now in agentic analytics, I think getting some form of evals and understanding that the trustworthiness is a really high leverage way to use your time. Cool, folks. I'll send out that email. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for the engagement and all the questions. We'll see you hopefully next Wednesday for that next lightning lesson. All right. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.